Hey, what is going on YouTube? Aaron here. We are back, ladies and gentlemen, and I know there's a lot to unpack in this initial live stream highlight here. We are playing the Cuniberti, and we were also blessed by the presence of Dr. Disrespect. No, I'm just kidding. If you guys were here for my Halloween live stream, this was obviously taken from that stream, so that is what is going on in the bottom right corner, but yeah, we look damn good. So who not better to play the worst performing Tier 7 destroyer than Dr. Disrespect? And that's right, the Cuniberti alongside the Northern Dragon is the worst performing destroyer at Tier 7. Now, I will get back to that, but first I want to get into a little bit of the strategy. As you guys know, of course, I love to talk about that. So right away, we are heading towards our closest cap. We spawned at the A flank. And the Italian destroyers, part of the reason they are some of the worst performing is you will notice our concealment, 6.4. So we head into the cap, initially get a spot, and of course, that is a Chapayev with an 11.7 radar. Now, if this Chapayev was a little radar happy, we could have been in a tricky spot here. So immediately we start reversing, and I'm not going to lie, this specific cap here, the A cap on shards, is very difficult for destroyers. Sometimes you can take the right side, but there's two very narrow channels, and most of the time destroyers take the one I am choosing, so you have to be aware of zoning torpedoes. Now we are not showing anything in the cap, but there they are, the zoning torpedoes, so it's a good thing that we backed up. Honestly, the Chapayev spotting us probably saved us a little bit, as we potentially could have gone through and eaten one of those torpedoes. It's just one of those things where it's like, okay, how many times have I gotten a dev strike or a torpedo hit in that channel gap? So, people watching me or using the same strategies, you apply that to the game. A lot of this game is pattern recognition and just predicting what your enemy will do. A lot of people, it's like, how do I be a better player? It's like, okay, well, think of what you would do. And that is kind of what I was getting at with my comment in the Stalingrad video, and also why I decided to use this Cuniberti video. Number one, it's a good replay. And number two, the Cuniberti, like we mentioned, is the worst performing Tier 7 destroyer alongside the Northern Dragon. The roundabout reason for that is you need to play multiple different ships and multiple different classes. In the Stalingrad video, I said constantly spamming OP ships is not going to make you a better player, and I used the Sumner and the Schlieffen as examples. Guys, no one particular ship is ultimately super broken besides maybe the AL Chapayev. But the reason I mentioned that, and this was, I made a video on this such a long time ago with the Wichita, is if you are constantly playing the same ship, you are not learning other play styles. And that was the point behind that comment. Some people got really butthurt, and it's like, well, Aaron, you only play American heavy cruisers. Well, yes, but my most played ship, the Baltimore, has been buffed, and it is definitely not a top performing cruiser, especially in the hands of the potatoes. Now, I never judge a ship based off the Wargaming spreadsheets, but if you look at the adjustments in the game, Wargaming does a decent job of making sure one ship is not just ultimately broken. Now, that being said, I think they are scratching the surface of what we should be worried about in terms of adjustments. And for example, the Cuniberti and I think half of the Italians, besides the battleships with the strong secondaries, could use a slight buff. But that being said, when in the right hands, you can absolutely take control and dominate a game. You will notice, though, we actually have retreated from the cap. We are playing a few, throwing a few risky salvos, but what we're doing is we're predicting where he'll shoot, and then we're dodging. You can see there that we actually missed that salvo, and we're getting defend ribbons in the meantime. Based off of the amount of cap points that I am getting from the Rook, meaning you can see the cap go all the way back to 0, I don't think there's a destroyer in this cap. Now, we did see torpedoes go by, but our twist and track has not changed. So it does, it tells us that the Rook is the closest ship. And again, we get the reset and it goes back down to 0. So either that destroyer reverted back, and there you will actually see our twist and track change, which tells us either the Chapayev or the destroyer is now the closest ship on the left. But that being said, again, you will notice we retreated from the cap. Why? Well, there was a radar cruiser there was a destroyer there, and there is currently a battleship in that cap. So a lot of destroyer players do the right thing, and I actually had a guy in a game, my mini game the other day, which we mentioned with the Duncan, and he just YOLO rushed into the cap against the triple division, and he got obliterated. And I said, why? You know, and he's like, oh, well, my engine got taken out. And what I said is just take it a little bit slower next time. I absolutely commend destroyer players for trying to get the cap, and you will notice that's what we did, but we were heavily outmatched. And on top of that, our battleships really didn't give that much support, with one of them kind of, flanking off into the middle there, as well as the central spawn going all the way over to C. So in this moment, right, if you're a destroyer player, you need to realize, okay, it's all right to concede this cap. Now, the issue becomes, how long do I concede it for? Because obviously in a domination game mode, if you let it go forever, you will simply lose on points. And that is when we become detected. The concealment of the Italian destroyers is failing us once again, but that is something you have to deal with. Here we could have rushed in, but this is what we're talking about in kind of laying this trap, right? Conceding this cap. Hopefully the enemy, the enemies here at A will become a little aggressive. We will lure them back. This is why you kite away. We kill a few of them, and then we push back into A. In the meantime, though, and this is a little reliant on what happens at C, if you're on the weak side, such as we are here, you just have to kind of hold out until your team hopefully wins at C. I've said it a few times before in the past. If you're on the strong side, you have to push aggressively through. If you're on the weak side, you have to hold. Now, in some games, your whole team is the weak side, right? And you lose. And that is when the Summers comes around the corner. We drew him right into our trap. We're looking back to see if we will have spots if we pop our smoke. It looks like we do. Thank goodness to that battleship. Unfortunately, someone put a gigantic island there. Who did that? But here we are protected in our smoke. The Summers is completely drawn out. The SAP is ripping him apart. The Italian destroyers have a little bit of a slower reload, but you get that SAP on those destroyers, and man, it abuses them. Now, the problem is you have the lower caliber guns, so sometimes it won't pen, on potentially heavy armored destroyers and especially on battleships and cruisers. We threw out those widespread torps. Down goes Randy. I'm sorry, Randy. I love you, dude. A famous celebrity appeared in my video here. And then we're trying to get the double strike, but the Summers is dodging well, so we're trying to lead him here, and we actually do get it to connect, but no double strike. No skill medal on this, on that play, but a perfect execution of just what we talked about. Now, of course, their team was overly aggressive, so it's playing this cat and mouse game, right? This game is a lot about just thinking about your next move and what to do if your team doesn't cooperate. Now, in a perfect world, everyone sails broadside in front of you, but unfortunately, I'm not an American Battleship main who lives in Fantasyland. No, I'm just kidding. I love my American Battleship mains, but sometimes if people don't sail broadside in front of them, and they get to move up 2 kilometers, then the game is broken, right? But this game does involve trying to outthink and outplay your opponents there, which is why I made the comment in my video about, not continually spamming OP ships. And here, just as an example, we are playing the worst destroyer or second worst destroyer at the tier and performing well, right? So playing different ships, playing different classes, learning about different classes. If you're a battleship player and you've never played a destroyer, how would you know what the capabilities of a destroyer are? If you're a cruiser and you've never been dev struck by a battleship or etc., how would you know, right? Here we get a few torpedo hits. None of them being floods, which I thought was a little strange. I was like, okay, maybe he was on damage con, but you'll notice we actually just get a fire, and he puts that out right away. So not sure why we didn't get a flood there. We know that the Italian torpedoes are, of course, very low alpha strike. And again, we're kind of shooting in between islands here, so just keep that in mind. You don't have the most health. You definitely don't have the concealment. And that is probably why the Italian destroyers are the worst performing, is because it requires you to use a lot of tools, right? I think certain destroyer players, and I make fun of American Battleship mains because that's what I used to be, right? I used to be that Iowa player who sat, mid-range at the spawn, didn't move forward, and expected everyone to sail broadside in front of me. But another class of players that probably overestimate their skill is destroyer players who abuse concealment. And I say abuse, and people are just going to take that, phrase. And what I mean by that is they run full concealment without really thinking about their positioning, and then they get caught, they smoke up right in front of a battleship, and then they try to YOLO rush him, which is honestly just one of the worst plays you can make in Legends. If you get spotted by a battleship without hydro as a destroyer who didn't come around a corner, or, that is like, that's just like a scoring your own goal in soccer. That's just like a safety in football. It's just one of the worst plays you can make. Here, though, we were in a little bit of a tricky spot, but the good news is we have our rolling smoke. The Chapi actually burned his radar a little bit early, so we got safely out of that. And at this point in the game, I'm going to be honest, I play this a little selfish. I decided I wanted to hunt for damage. We're at 99,000 with a few torpedo hits, some nice defend ribbons. There's a little bit of health left on the board. And of course, our team is up, 300 points and what, 6 versus 2 now with the Rook getting eliminated. I thought this is a little bit of a misplay on my part. I thought that this smoke would have protected me. We see the Shiratsu turning in there. We actually get a salvo on the Chapayev, which does tick the high caliber. So a high caliber in an Italian destroyer, which is nice, but that's not the main job. We got a bunch of defend ribbons. We killed another enemy destroyer. So we did our job. The damage is just a side bonus. Here, though, I get a little bit caught, and the reason is our twist and track was looking at the Chapayev. We get, spotted in our smoke, and that is when the Shiratsu comes around here and closes in on us. His last known position was going towards the cap, so that's why I went this way and I shot. The good news is we have our SAP, though. We are able to absolutely chunk him. He is one of the only Japanese destroyer players to use his guns, and of course he is chunking us as a result. They have very good alpha strike. Just a little bit slower reload, even though Shiratsu is of the gunboat variety. Not really a true gunboat. If we would have gotten one more salvo off, we would have probably gotten the kill. Unfortunately, the Chapayev got a dying breath, and he did get us. So definitely a little bit of a misplay, if we're being honest. Why? You never want to leave a destroyer alive against a bunch of battleships and cruisers. Now, of course, our team has a huge point advantage and a huge cap advantage. So if they truly want to win this game with 3 minutes left, they should just run away. But we'll go ahead and throw it to the scoreboard here. As you can see, the Dr. Disrespect gun point, 119,000 with 2 kills, 11 defends in the Kuniber T, the worst performing Tier 7 destroyer. Here, we'll go ahead and show you guys the build I was running. Giuseppe Sciglielli Fluvigassi. I'm not even sure if this is the best build for the Italians. I'm sure someone will have a better build. And honestly, Eric Bay is a little bit of a wasted inspiration. But this is the build I was running, and there is the scoreboard. 31-87 with 2 kills, and of course the high caliber, and Dr. Disrespect stroking the Ethiopian caterpillar there on the stream. So hope you guys enjoyed that one. Let me know if you guys want to see me play the worst performing boats, for features later on. Everyone have a great day. AA run out. Peace.